Science fiction and fantasy in Poland dates to the late 18th century. During the later years of the People's Republic of Poland, social science fiction was a very popular genre of science fiction. Afterwards, many others gained prominence. Currently there are many science fiction writers in Poland. Internationally, the best-known Polish science fiction writer is Stanislaw Lem. As elsewhere, Polish science fiction is closely related to the genres of fantasy, horror and others. Although many English-language writers have been translated into Polish, relatively little Polish-language science fiction has been translated into English. History. Science fiction in Poland started in the late 18th century during the Polish Enlightenment, when Michał Dymitar Krajewski wrote a novel about the adventures of a Pole on the moon. In the mid-19th century, during the age of Romanticism in Poland, Adam Mickiewicz, reckoned by many to be Poland's top poet, also worked on a Verne-like science fiction novel A History of the Future, but never published it. Later in the same century, the period of positivism in Poland saw several writers explore themes similar to Verne and H. G. Wells, among them Władysław Umiński, Włodzimierz Zagorski and Sigurd Wisniewski. However, perhaps the most famous Polish writer of the time, Bolesław Prus, used science fiction elements in his mainstream fiction. For example, his novel Lalka includes a mad scientist, as well as a lighter-than-air metal. Similar themes are seen in the works of Prus' colleague, Stefan Aromski, with his Houses of Glasses in Przewoźny, and his Death Rays in Rosa. In the early 20th century, Jerzy Ulowski was probably the most popular Polish science fiction author, with his Luna trilogy, a masterpiece for its time and place of composition. Similar works were created by Tadeusz Kończyński, Wacław Kasiorowski and Maria Julia Zaleska. In the reborn Second Polish Republic, other writers followed in this genre. Edmund Kruger and Kazimierz Ondrzejczykowski were known for his many books addressed to the younger audience, Bruno Winor for his satirical take, and Jerzy Rychlinski and Ferdun and Antoni Osandowski for the catastrophic vision of future war. Finally, Antoni Slonimski's DWA Konspirators is perhaps the best-known dystopian work of the time. After World War II, in the first decade of the People's Republic of Poland, science fiction was used as a propaganda tool by the communist regime, with its main purpose being to show the bright future of communism. Only after Joseph Stalin's death were Polish writers to gain more leeway and start questioning the reality around them, albeit always struggling against censorship. At the time, the undisputed leader of Polish science fiction was Stanislaw Lem, who first questioned the regime's actions in his memoirs found in a bathtub. He was followed by Jane Asay, Zagel, Konrad Fialkowski and Czesław Kruszewski, and from the mid-70s for a short period by the acclaimed writings of Adam Wisniewski Snurg. In the late 1970s, the genre called sociological fantasy arose in the People's Republic of Poland. This is seen as a Polish subgenre of social science fiction. It focuses on the development of societies dominated by totalitarian governments. The genre is dominated by Jane Asay, Zagel, Edmund W. N. U. K. Lipinski, Adam Wisniewski Snurg and Marek Oronmus. Some works by Stanislaw Lem can also be classified within this genre. The fantastical settings of books of this genre were usually only a pretext for analyzing the structure of Polish society, and were always full of allusions to reality. After the revolutions of 1989, when the use of real-world examples in fiction became safe in former Eastern Bloc countries, the genre largely transcended transformed itself into political fiction, represented by writers such as Rafale Ziemkowicz, although an echo is visible in the 1990s dystopia Hard SF duology by Tomasz Kołodziejczak. Polish fantasy began to appear in the late 1980s, however it was not until the first publications by Andrzej Sapkowski and Felix W. Kress in the late 1980s, early 1990s that Poland acquired its first true fantasy writers. Another fantasy series of that time was authored by Konrad Lewandowski. The 1980s were also the time Polish comics dealing with fantasy and science fiction were released, such as The Witcher comic book, and the science fiction series Funky Kowal. In the 1990s there was an explosion of translations, primarily from the Western literature. The major Polish publishing house specializing in Polish science fiction and fantasy literature was Supernova. The scene was transformed around and after 2002, with Supernova losing its dominant position, and many new Polish writers, the 2002 generation, appearing. An increasing number of translations from non-English speaking countries has been noticeable as well. Currently, much of Polish science fiction and fantasy resembles the familiar to English-language writers. There are many science fiction writers as well as fantasy writers in Poland, and the works vary from alternate histories to hard science fiction. The best internationally known Polish science fiction writer is undoubtedly Stanislaw Lem, although many others can be considered world-class, with the books being translated into many languages. Relatively little Polish language science fiction and fantasy has been translated into English, even though countless English language writers have been translated into Polish. Modern writers. Popular modern Polish science fiction and fantasy writers include Ewa Bialaleka, Anna Brzezinska, one of the youngest Polish writers, known for her ongoing fantasy saga, the first book of which was released in 1999. Eugeniusz Debski, a writer of fantasy and science fiction, best known for two series, the science fiction detective stories of Owen Yates and the humorous adventures of a chameleon knight, Hondelik. Jacek Dukarz, one of the most acclaimed writers of the 1990s and 2000s, and winner of many awards. He is known for the complexity of his books, and it is often said that a single short story by Dukarz contains more ideas than many other writers put into the books in the lifetime. His books are generally hard SF. Popular themes include the technological singularity, nanotechnology, and virtual reality. Among his favorite writers is Australian Greg Egan, and Dukarz's books bear some resemblance to Egan's. Jaroslaw Grzedowicz, author of fantasy stories, winner of Zajdel Award for book and short story in 2005. Anna Kantok, Tomasz Kołodziejczak, science fiction and fantasy writer, screenwriter, publisher and editor of books, comics and role-playing games. Marek Hubril, author of many short stories. He focuses on the humanistic aspects of his characters. Maya Lydia Kosakowska, a fantasy writer, her trademark is the frequent appearance of angels. Felix W. Kress, best known for his two fantasy cycles, Księga Kalosai, set on a world called Syra, where cats and vultures as well as humans are intelligent, and Pieklo is Pada, a dark fantasy set in an alternate 17th century, where demons and beings older than Satan openly interact with humanity. Jacek Komuda, known for his fantasy stories set in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. His writing often closely resembles a historical novel, though he doesn't shy from supernatural elements such as witches and devils. He is also one of the authors of the Juki Pola role-playing game set in that period. Stanislaw Lem. Lem was Poland's most acclaimed and famous science fiction writer, and the only one who had had most of his works translated into English. He often veered into philosophical speculation on technology, the nature of intelligence, the impossibility of mutual communication and understanding, and humankind's place in the universe. His works are sometimes presented as fiction, to avoid the trappings of academic life and the limitations of readership and scientific style, while others take the form of essays and philosophical books. Konrad T. Lewandowski, Łukasz Orbatowski, Romuald Pawlak, Jacek Piekara. Andrzej Pilapiak is best known for his humorous series about Jakub Wedrowicz, an alcoholic exorcist and unwilling superhero. Recently he started another popular series, featuring the adventures of three women: an over 1,000-year-old vampire, a 300-year-old alchemist Szlechonka, and her relative, a former Polish secret agent from the CB. A recurring character in the series is the alchemist Mitchell Sedziewicz, and the universe is the same as the one of Wedrowicz. Andrzej Sapkowski. Sapkowski is one of the best-selling Polish authors, translated into many languages. He is best known for his The Witcher fantasy series. The main character of the series is Geralt, a mutant assassin trained from childhood to hunt down and destroy monsters and other unnatural creatures. Geralt moves in an ambiguous moral universe, yet manages to maintain his own coherent code of ethics. At once cynical and noble, Geralt has been compared to Raymond Chandler's signature character Philip Marlowe. The world in which these adventures take place owes much to J.R.R. Tolkien, while also heavily influenced by Polish history and Slavic mythology. Jacek Sobota, Witsustak, Janus Zajdel. He became the second most popular Polish science fiction writer until his sudden death in 1985. Zajdel's novels created the core of Polish social fiction and dystopian fiction. In his works, he envisions totalitarian states and collapsed societies. His heroes are desperately trying to find sense in world around them. Sometimes, as in Cylinder Van Troffer, they are outsiders from a different time or place, trying to adapt to a new environment. The main recurring theme in his works is a comparison of the reader's gloomy, hopeless situations to what may happen in a space environment if we carry totalitarian ideas and habits into space worlds. Red space republics or space labor camps, or both. The Janus Zajdel Award of Polish fandom is named after him. Rafał A. Ziemkiewicz. In the 1990s he was one of the most popular Polish science fiction authors. For his novels Pipe Zony Los Katroniace and WLC Stulecia, as well as his short story Pijaka Krojuna, he was awarded the prestigious Zajdel Award. A popular theme in his works is the fate of Poland and more broadly, Europe. In the near future, his books often paint the future in dark colors, showing the Commonwealth of Independent States disintegrate into a civil war, European Union becoming powerless in the face of Islamic terrorism, and predatory capitalism and political correctness taken ad absurdum, leading to the erosion of morality and ethics. Thus his books are often classified as political fiction and social science fiction, although they stop short of being seen as dystopian fiction. Andrzej Ziemniak. Andrzej Zemianski. Zemianski writes both science fiction, with themes like post-apocalyptic Autobahn nach Poznan and alternative history Bomber Heisenberger, and fantasy, like his most recent Achaja series. Publishers. There are two major Polish science fiction and fantasy monthly magazines. The oldest one is now a Fantastyki, published first in 1982. The more recent one, founded in 2001, is Science Fiction, which publishes mainly new Polish works and much fewer translations than NF. As of 2006, both had a circulation of about 8,000–15,000. Prominent magazines that are no longer published include Phoenix, Sphinx and Magia IMIECZ. Several are published online in e-zine form, the most prominent being Fahrenheit and Esencja. There are two major Polish publishing houses specializing in Polish science fiction and fantasy: Fabryka Slow and Runa. Supernova, once a dominant publishing house on that field, has now lost much of its position. Mag and Solaris publish mostly translations, and in what is seen as boom for the Polish science fiction and fantasy market. Mainstream publishing houses are increasingly publishing such works as well. A book with a circulation of over 10,000 is considered a bestseller in Poland. Fandom. Polish science fiction fandom is prominent, with dozens of science fiction conventions throughout Poland. The largest of them is Polcon. Other prominent ones include Falcon, Imladris, Krakow and Nordcon. Two largest prizes awarded by fandom of the Janusay, Zajdel Award and the Nautilus Prize. Other notable include the Lagfa Award of the oldest Polish fandom club, the Silesian Fantasy Club. Science fiction conventions in Poland are de facto almost always science fiction and fantasy conventions, and are often heavily mixed with role-playing gaming conventions. On the other hand, although Poland has also several manga and anime conventions, they are usually kept separate from the science fiction and gaming fandom conventions. Other media. Polish science fiction writing has not had much impact on non-print media like cinema, television and computer games, although several science fiction, fantasy and horror films and games have been made in Poland. The notable exception is Seksmisja, which has become something of a cult film in Poland, and has been widely aired abroad, for example in UK. Other lesser-known examples include the films of Piotrus. In the late 2000s, the Witcher computer game series became a bestseller worldwide.